Parshas Devarim. The very beginning of the Parsha opens as follows. Ele hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael be'evar Yarden. These are the words. Now we're going to ask ourselves, what exactly are the words? These are the words. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel be'evar Yarden, beyond the Jordan, on the other side of the Jordan. Bamidbar, in the desert. Ba'arava, on the Arava plain. Mol Suf, opposite Suf. Ben Paran uvein Tofel, between Paran and Tofel. V'lavan v'chatzeros v'dizahav, and Lavan and Chatzeros and Dizahav. How does this work exactly? Moshe is standing be'evar Yarden. Evar Yarden, the Meforshim point out, means the other side of the Jordan. So it depends where you're standing. If you're standing in the area that is east of the Jordan, then the Evar Yarden would be in Eretz Yisrael. If you're standing in Eretz Yisrael, then Evar Yarden is on the east bank of the Jordan River. And so he's standing on the east bank of the Jordan River. Now we're talking about that's not the desert. That's Evar Yarden. So what does the verse mean when it says Evar Yarden, and then it says Bamidbar, Ba'arava, Mulsov, Paran, Tofel, all these different places? Now, admittedly, a couple of these places, Tofel v'Lavan, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says that he has not found them in the Chumash. And different Meforshim give different explanations, but the most commonly accepted explanation is that these are all places. Now, how could he stand in all of these different places and give this speech? It's simply not possible. So some would suggest that Moshe is recounting the places at which various mitzvos were given. Rashi, on the other hand, says that each of these places refers to a different place where the Jews faltered, where they failed. So what's Bamidbar? Hichisu Bamidbar, Mitein Musein Bamidbar. When they were in the desert, they said, oh, if only we would have died in the desert rather than go through this. Ba'arava, so it says, Shechatu b'Baal Peor. They sinned with the idol worship of Baal Peor in Arvos Moav. Mol Suf, there they said, Hamibli ein kvarim ba'aretz, opposite the Amsuf. They said, are there not sufficient graves in Egypt? Hamibli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim, are there not sufficient graves in Egypt to bury us? You have to bury us here in the desert? It was a very facetious complaint. Bein Paran uvein Tofel. So we mentioned Reb Shimon bar Yochai, but others say that it refers to either their complaint about eating mun on a regular basis, like lechem haklokel, this light or not very appealing bread, or according to others, it's talking about the meraglim, the spies who sinned. Chatzeros is talking about the episode of the rebellion of Korach. Dizahav is talking about the place, it alludes to the Maisa Egel. What is going on here? So Rashi says that these are all allusions to places that the Jews faltered, that they sinned. And rather than talk about it explicitly, Moshe Rabbeinu makes an allusion here. But wait a second. We said, Ela advar Moshe diber Moshe el kol Yisrael be'evar Yarden. These are the words that he said. Well, where are those words? And then the next verse says, Achad asar yom mechorev, derech har seir ad kanesh barnea. 11 days journey from Chorev, which is another name for Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, by the path of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. We seem to be getting different coordinates on the map here. And then the next verse says, Vayhi bar b'im shana b'shtei asar chodesh, b'chol chodesh, it was in the 40th year, on the 12th month, on the first day of that month, Diber Moshe el b'nei Yisrael, k'chol asher tzivoso Hashem oso alehem. So then is when Moshe spoke. So it says these are the words. It doesn't quote any words. It quotes a bunch of disparate places, even though he's standing at Evar Yarden. This book is a one long goodbye speech by Moshe Rabbeinu, which he summarizes much of what happened to the Jews, and he gives them musar, gives them reproof. What is the deal with these different places? So there's an allusion to the shortcomings of the children of Israel. Well, we know that because it's written in the Torah. But how is this communicated to the Jews? Where do we see this being communicated? Now, if we look at Rashi on the third verse, which says, the second verse, 11 days from Chorev. So Rashi says, Amar lahem Moshe. Moshe said to them, Ru'u ma shegaramtem. Look at what you caused. Then he goes on to say, it's the quickest you can travel from Chorev to Kadesh Barnea is 11 days, and you made the trip in 3 days. You stayed in the desert not because you couldn't move fast. You moved faster than anybody moves when they're in the desert. But you ended up circling Har Seir for 40 years because of your shortcomings. Where did Moshe say this to them? I would like to suggest that Moshe actually said these words. The first part of the verse is signified by an esnachta. That the esnachta is kind of like the major separation point, dividing point in most psukim. So that goes, these are the words that Moshe said, ba'arava, esnachta. Then he said, I suggest, the following words. Mosof, bein paran ubein tofel. Excuse me. Ba'arava, Mosov, Ben Param, Ben Tofel, Lavan, the Chatzeros, the Zahav. He's starting out simply mentioning names. Well, why is he simply mentioning names? Because for the children of Israel, when they went through this, they know exactly what Moshe means when he mentions those names. Let's use different names and see what emerges in our consciousness. Normandy, Dresden, Auschwitz, Pearl Harbor, or Yamit, Neve Dekalim, Aza, or Benghazi, Baghdad, Tehran, Saigon, Kabul, Beirut. These are all places. But for people who are familiar with the important events that took place from the perspective of either the Jews or the Americans, we know exactly what that means. Now we're talking about, let's say, current events. Uvalde, Sandy Hook, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Poway, Highland Park. We all know what these allusions are to. This is what Moshe is doing. Moshe is, without having to say anything else other than the places, he's setting the stage for, without clobbering the Jews over the head, the Bnei Israel over the head, with the details of each of these, he's setting the stage for a very long Musar speech, a speech of reproof. And he starts by alluding to the shortcomings of the Jews as they wandered through the desert. We sometimes face the challenge of how to give reproof, how to correct someone. Sometimes we have to be very explicit, otherwise they won't understand. Sometimes we have to be very soft and almost enigmatic. Just a word, just an allusion will do the trick. Moshe Rabbeinu, as a leader, needs to straddle the fence. He needs to, on the one hand, correct the Bnei Israel when they need correction. On the other hand, not to do it in such a way that it crushes their spirit. We are about to observe the commemoration of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. We know that that conjures up a lot of shortcomings on our part. We also know that if we take the words of Eicha Tahart and of the Kinos, and we do our best to correct the ills of all the generations in which the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, was not rebuilt, that we stand a chance of seeing it be rebuilt in our days. Have a good Shabbos.